Oh, will you introduce it?
Hello everyone, welcome to Victor Digues Lacerda's presentation on his Viva Voce. His topic of focus is on economics, so thank you for coming. We have on the panel Carl, Mr. Barbosa and Ms. Barber, who will be giving feedback on Victor's presentation. Once again, at the end of that presentation, once you have feedback, if the audience would like to give anything additional, that would also be appreciated. So please come welcome Victor.
So thank you. Before I start, I brought 2 copies of my extended essay for the audience to be able to see. So I'm going to pass them around. So here, please keep them back at the end. Good morning all. I'd like to thank you all for being here in my presentation, especially the panelists for helping me out with my extended essay. So really thank you for this. And today I'll be presenting on my extended essay. My name is Victor Digues Lacerda, for those who don't know. I'm Brazilian and I've been studying here at EAB for 7 months. So how I began the process of my extended essay. First of all, last year I took a summer course in the University of Oxford, Balliol College. It was an economics and business course. At the time, the Greek financial crisis was a topic of debate in the news media and inside my classroom. So my teacher, my economics teacher, was the one who sparked my interest in this economic crisis. When I got here at EAB, I was a little bit behind with the IB curriculum. Therefore, I had to work along Ms. Katrina Charles and Ms. Palmer to get started with the extended essay. While my peers knew the criteria for the extended essay, ideas on the topics, I didn't. So that was a challenge for me, and I had to catch up that with the help of Ms. Katrina Charles and Ms. Palmer. So thank you, Ms. Katrina. After long thought, for a fact I knew that economics was going to be my area of my extended essay, mainly because I'm still considering economics and business for my degree in college. And then I recalled my time in the University of Oxford, and I remember about the Greek financial crisis. So then I knew I wanted to write an economic essay on the Greek financial crisis. And after several retweaks of the research question, we came to the research question: how significant is the current Greek financial crisis in the European Union? So a little bit of how I structure my extended essay. First of all, I have my abstract, which is required for this year. I have an introduction, and then I have a section that tries to analyze how the Greek financial crisis came to happen. And then I have the social effects of the Greek financial crisis in the European Union. Then I have the economic effects of the Greek financial crisis in the European Union. And at last, I have the conclusion and my bibliography. So my abstract. I'm going to talk a little bit about my abstract because it's probably the most important section of my extended essay. Mainly because at the time of writing my extended essay, the Greek financial crisis was still an ongoing crisis. So I had to make sure the reader of my extended essay knew the time frame of which I had written my extended essay. Therefore, I emphasize that all data is from 2001 up to April 2016. I also try to address how I use the data. So the older data is used to provide a context of how the Greek financial crisis came to be and all of that. While the most recent data is to provide a more kind of an analysis. In addition, I try to tackle what's the meaning of significance. So different people have different perspectives on significance. So significance in my essay is going to be mainly economically significance and social significance. And later I try to explain how I'm going to research, how I'm going to go with the investigation on my research question. So a little bit about the Greek financial crisis. First of all, it's considered to have started in 2009, and it's been going up to the present date. This is the date they say is supposed to be to have started. However, as you're going to see, it actually started way earlier. It's being referred as the Greek Depression, making allusion to the Great Depression in the United States, and it's one of the biggest financial crises in the European Union. Throughout this financial crisis, Greece was able to sum a debt of over 240 billion euros, which represents 200% of its GDP. So it's twice the size of its GDP. And as you can see in my essay, to pay its debt, we had to borrow money from different government bodies, from different banks, and as well received bailouts from the European Central Bank. One of the main things I try to talk about in my essay is the fear that the Greek financial crisis brought upon the European Union. So there was a fear that the European Union might break up. I'm going to talk more of this in the next section, so just so you guys have an idea. Also, something that at the time of when I was researching about the Greek financial crisis is that the Greek economy only represents 2% of the European Union GDP. So 2%, as many people argue, is considered to be too small to have an actual impact in the European Union. However, what my essay is directed is actually the opposite. It actually has a great impact in the European Union. So a context on how the Greek financial crisis came to happen. So Greece joined the Eurozone in 2001. In other words, Greece decided to adopt the euro and leave behind its older currency, the drachma. As a consequence, the drachma has a lower value, and the new currency has a much higher value, therefore increasing purchasing power for both the Greek government and its citizens. As well, they were offered lower interest rates, so borrowing money was something more affordable in an economic sense. And Greece, being part of the European Union, import goods from different European countries without the imposition of taxes. So all of these factors combined pushed Greece into spending too much. Keep that in mind, we're going to come back a little bit later. So what happens when the European Union, when Greece adopted the euro? So first of all, it had to give up its central bank. And central bank is crucial for conducting monetary policy. And monetary policy is a kind of policy that tries to correct levels of aggregate demand by manipulating the supply of money through interest rates and inflation. So essentially, when Greece adopted the euro, it lost its autonomy to have a specific monetary policy that was correct for Greece. And now we have the European Central Bank, that is the central bank that conducts this kind of policy for all the countries in the Eurozone. And now let's think together. You have many countries. And some of the countries like Germany are strong economies, and other countries like Greece are considered to be small economies. Now, having a correct monetary policy that is correct for both sides of the spectrum is really hard. In fact, I would say it's even non-existent. So one of the main problems was that the monetary policy imposed by the European Central Bank was correct for economies like Germany, but really bad for economies like Greece, so pushing Greece into this economic recession. In addition to that, remembering how I told that Greece spent too much money. At the time also Greece was suffering from what's called a tax evasion problem. It is estimated that per year about from 10 to 20 billion euros was lost by the Greek government for not collecting taxes. Now, this is really important even considering that Greece hosted the Olympics at the time. So for hosting the Olympics, governments invest a lot of money, and they spend a lot of money, and by not collecting the necessary amount of tax, we have a negative balance. And to add upon this, we have the 2008 financial crisis, the one with the bankruptcy of the Lehman Brothers. So this greatly affected the ongoing recession in Greece, and because there was a lack of there was a decrease in investment, and it increases interest rate, making Greece debt a lot higher. So I later proceed in talking about the social effects of the crisis in the European Union. The social effects also has an economic aspect to it. It's just a different approach in a way. So mainly what happened in Greece is that over 250,000 companies were bankrupt. As a result, unemployment rates went through the roof. In fact, 30% of its citizens were unemployed. My paper mainly focuses on youth unemployment. So let me define unemployment. Unemployment is that people of working age currently looking for a job but unable to find one. While youth unemployment is specific for the range of people from 15 to 24 years old. And in fact, as we can see, youth unemployment in Greece was much higher. It was 48%. And one of the things I try to say in my essay is that this youth unemployment creates what I call a lost generation. So what do I mean by lost generation? So let's imagine a scenario. We have Greek teenagers coming out of universities without the possibility of acquiring a job. So what mainly happens is that many of these citizens, many of these teenagers do not practice what they learn in college. And this lack of practice creates inefficiency. Later on, when these teenagers will be the main pillars of Greece economy, and in fact, since Greece economy is attached to the European economy, as well as the pillars for the European economy, the next generation is going to provide a lot of inefficiency. So inefficiency is connected to market failure, which again is one of the aspects of the effect of the Greek financial crisis. In addition to this inefficiency, a lot of these teenagers were exposed to a negative environment. So first of all, over 10,000 suicides have taken place, crime increased significantly, drug abuse, homelessness. So all of these factors essentially of poverty is going to create a poverty cycle. And it's going to, again, affect the Greek economy, and the European economy. Now let's take this kind of Greek focus and try to connect it to the European Union. So we talked about how this inefficiency can be spread into the European economy, mainly because Greece is part of the European economy. However, there's something called, correct me if I'm pronouncing wrong, Schengen area. So basically it means that European countries can go to other European countries fairly easy. So there's the risk of contagion. So for example, unemployed citizens in Greece will be looking for jobs in more stronger economies like Germany. Now, consider the ongoing immigrant crisis in Europe. There's already a surge of immigrants in those countries. And having this additional surge of immigrants is going to greatly hamper the economy, mainly because you have a surplus of workforce, which decreases having too much of something decreases the wages, which is the salary you gain. So this has economic effects, which I go more in detail in my essay, but this is just an overview. Now, the effects on the European economy. As a start, the first thing we can see is that due to the Greek financial crisis, there was a decrease in the European Union GDP. As we can see in 2009, it went to about -4%. So what's GDP? GDP is one of the measures of economic growth and stands for gross domestic product. And this, as a result, as we can see, generally greatly impacted the European Union, mainly because with negative GDP, you give rise to unemployment. So one of the things I mentioned about my essay is that unemployment rates in the European Union as a result increase. Of course, there's also the, as I mentioned already, the 2008 financial crisis. So, of course, not all of the effect is Greece, but still it's an effect that it's still a portion of the effect that contributed to this ongoing thing. In addition, we have exchange rates. So, exchange rate due to the Greek financial crisis were greatly affected, mainly because there was a devaluing of the euro currency. So this is mainly because investors were losing confidence in the European Union. By having a decrease in confidence, there's a decrease in the demand for the euro, which decreases the value of the euro. As you can see, it was was the worst value in 11 years. However, there's also a good thing about this devaluing of the currency, mainly because by devalued currency you gain in exports. So the European Union gain an advantage in selling their exports in other countries, and they gain an advantage in having imports much more expensive, making the net balance section of GDP kind of balanced in a way. As we can see, after 2009, the European Union GDP increased fairly rapidly. This is mainly because a lot of protection was implemented by the European Central Bank. So I'm going with this effects on the EU economy. Here we have a graph in how the Greece debt is spread across both European countries. We have the US, although it's not a European country, it's also listed there. We see the main thing that happens here that is really obvious is there's an opportunity cost. So governments like Germany invested a lot of money in buying Greece debt, and as a result, they could have used that money to buy to further improve their economy, etc. And they're also facing the risk of not even receiving the payment with interest back from Greece, as Greece economy is still going through a recession. For the banks as well, the same thing. Banks paid a lot of money for buying Greece debt, and as a result, this decreases the amount of money they can lend into the economy, so decreases investment in the bank's country, and it can actually start a banking crisis. So, probably the most important aspect of I talk about in my essay is the Greek exit. So nowadays we have the Great Britain leaving the European Union. However, the European Union is not the Eurozone. So there are two opposing things. And the Greek exit will be the first event of a Eurozone country to leave the Euro. As a first effect, we have the uncertainty. So especially economists don't like to be uncertain of what are the effects of something. Of course, they speculate, but the lack of having a real concrete idea of what's the effects really affects the European Union for ways that they could have implemented measures to try to contain any damaging effects. And there's also the contagion of fear. So economies like Portugal and Spain, who are also going through some economic crisis, might think, oh, Greece is leaving, I might as well also leave the Eurozone. So what this basically, what basically we can see of this is that it showed the greatest weakness of the European Union. So this idea of leaving is because somewhat these countries are not satisfied with what the European Union and the Euro is providing them. So that's one of the things I also talked on my extended essay. Now, in my conclusion, I tried to address my limitation. First of all, I don't have a primary research. I focus on only on secondary research. But I try to overcompensate it. If you see my bibliography, I have over 60 works cited to try to compensate this lack of primary research, and it's also something I take into account in my essay. I also try to restate the meaning of significance to try again remember how this essay is trying to see from which glasses this essay is trying to see this issue. And I conclude that indeed the Greek financial crisis had a great effect in the European Union, as we already saw from the many different aspects. But the main one I address is this idea of the weakness that it showed other countries. So this is especially important because if you feel a union is weak, there's a lack of confidence. So the lack of confidence, there's a lack of investment, and you can see the ongoing thing. I will just finish off with my recommendation for juniors. So, guys, really, if you feel you're not handling the extended essay well, whatever, try to see Ms. Katrina Charles, she really helps, or try to see your supervisor, because it's something you're going to have to deliver, either really good or really bad. And also something that I did that really helped me is choosing a topic that I like, economics. Something I want to pursue. So I was really interested all the time in looking for new sources, looking for new evidence that could support my arguments and all of that. But mainly, one of the biggest things of the extended essay is its size. My extended essay is 26 pages long, and I especially think that trying to read your extended essay on the computer is really awful. Like, honestly, I printed, if you go to my house, I have a drawer full of extended essay, a previous version of extended essay. Okay, we're wasting paper, but this is something that goes to your final grade, and it's way better to make it really messy and try to improve upon that. So that's my suggestion for juniors. And now I'm open for questions and suggestions.
Thank you, Victor, for your presentation. A lot of pacing up and back and forth, but okay. All right, panelists, who would like to start first?
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I would just want to say first that it was quite impressively well researched. Like, it was extensive research which fit the extended essay, and yeah, just so many sightings, and it was very good. And I think you kept tying it back to economics all the time, and I think that was very. It was just solidly written in like very very concise, but a lot of information, which was very good, especially for economics. But just like there were some very minor like language errors, just tiny things. And if you just go through before sending it in, just one time, look at each word. Because firstly, like subconsciously, the reader notices that and takes that into consideration, but also the language part is 4 points, and it's just easy to touch up on. And then secondly,
Can I stop you just a second? Can I record this?
I have a problem with that. Do the panelists have a problem with that? No? Go ahead.
It's nice that our words are whispering.
Oh, sorry, wait a minute. Hold on, Victor, it is being recorded.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Apologies, sir, thank you. Carry on.
Yeah, secondly, you did very well in general by defining things, especially like unemployment, which you would expect everyone to know, but in economic terms, it's good that you define it. But I noticed like things like GDP you mentioned before without, and I think if you, like it's good to keep consistency with definitions. So like define everything that is related to econ, because you did it for unemployment, so just keep it going for everything. Yeah, and something I thought about, especially like my example would be the quote on page 19 here. It's about a third of the page, and even though it's good, it's great that you have a lot of information. Some of these quotations have analysis in themselves, and I think sometimes they almost seem to take away from your own analysis. And I think like a lot of like here it has a lot of info, but then it kind of goes into its own analysis. And since you're quoting something else, that would take away from the research part and make it more analysis, and you could write that in your own words and make that your analysis part. And I think you can cut down on word count as well, if that can help. And then just the last thing, what I noticed in conclusion is, especially for your topic, since it's ongoing and it's still going. One thing that's crucial for the conclusion and for you to get key points is unanswered questions, which Charles talked to me about for mine as well, and especially for yours. I mean, there's clearly a lot still going on, right? So, do you have any continuing questions that you know already, or I mean, that would be something you could add to. But is there anything that you have?
What do you mean by questions?
It's like unresolved questions that you haven't answered in your extended essay, and I think especially since it's ongoing, that's.
I haven't thought that about that. Like, I'll think next time.
But that's part of the rubric says for the conclusion. I'm sure you can find something.
Well, first of all, congratulations. This was a great presentation, a great essay. I actually really like how you explained everything. Like when you mentioned budget deficit, you said what a budget deficit is. When you mentioned tax evasion, you mentioned what tax evasion is. Same thing with everything from credit rating. There was one thing or another, but like it was really good. This is very important. So it was really good. It was really good. Like you basically saw like every single, how it affected in every single different aspect. So congratulations. My only suggestion would be, if you decide to take this further, maybe to university or something like that, it's just, this is a topic that there's so much material in. Like, it's, don't take me wrong, because it was very impressive what you did, being that you're here for 7 months, while some others have been working on this since the junior year. But this is a paper where I can print 5 scientific articles, read, kind of like get a little bit from something. So kind of finding a specific, doesn't need to be original. Original, you only need master's or doctoral. But try to find a specific thing to attack, because it's like so many papers. Yours is really good, it's amazing. But a lot of papers just like this, attacking the same thing, just talking about it in different words. So so in the future, if you decide to keep on doing this, try to find a specific thing, a little bit more original, and focus on that instead of too general. And congratulations, just both the oral presentation and the essay itself, very impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you very much, Victor. I really enjoyed the lecture, and if you're giving another one, I'll come, because you're a really good speaker. And I agree that it's a well-written paper, clearly structured, good definitions, good referencing, everything like that. So well done. So I lived through this crisis, and my country has chosen to leave the EU, which you could say was, maybe related to what it saw going on the continent. And I worked through the policy discussions around this. So it's a subject that interests me greatly as well. And as such, I know you've defined significance in terms of social effects and economic effects. But I think under the economic effects, you might want to think a bit about economic institutions and economic policy making. So, I don't know how much time you have to edit your essay, and so you can decide how much of this you want to think about or not. But in economics, there's a theory of what makes an optimal currency union. Basically, when should countries or states get together and say we're going to have the same currency? And that includes having things like a common fiscal policy, the ability to make decisions together, free movement of labour, so people can go from where there aren't jobs to where there are, and so forth. And the Eurozone was basically an experiment, right? It was creating a group of 19 countries and saying, we think that we can make it work with one currency. And the Greek crisis has tested that quite a lot. And as well as having economic impacts in terms of GDP and unemployment, some of the changes that have happened are also in economic structures. So I don't know whether that came up in your research, but I would suggest it to you as something to reference at least. Sorry, maybe I'll ask that to you as a question rather than commenting it. What do you think?
So I don't really know about this economic structures that you're mentioning, but I have come from several articles that try because several measurements were implemented to try to fix this crisis. So there were several tweaks with the European Union Eurozone, sorry, that tried. So is that what you mean, like different approaches?
Yeah.
So yeah, I come to several, but not really specific. I couldn't find.
So maybe at the time when you were in Oxford, I'm not sure which summer it was, but there was a moment when Alexander Tsipras, the Greek Prime Minister, came to the European Parliament and basically said, please give Greece money, we're about to run out of money, we're going to fall out of the euro, this is a real crisis. And it was a fascinating moment when a leader of a country, democratically elected by people who said we don't want austerity, we don't want all these nasty economic reforms you're making us go through, came in front of fellow European policy makers and politicians, and they said, why should we pay? We're hardworking, we pay taxes, why should we pay for you in Greece? And it was a very interesting political and institutional moment, because at that point, the Eurozone confronted the theory of an optimal currency union, which is you have all these decision-making processes, you can redistribute tax within your country, as it were, within your currency zone. And then the fact that the Eurozone still thought of itself as different countries. So Germany thought of itself as making one set of decisions, France, Italy, Greece, and so forth. And this was I think this is a really significant thing for the EU and for the Eurozone. And I would try to find some way to reference this. And because it's an economics essay, I wouldn't write about all of the politics, but just to say there is this theory of what is needed to support a currency successfully. And then say, did the Eurozone have that before? And does it have it now? I would include that in your economics section. You mentioned in your presentation, which I was very glad about, that there's a difference between the Eurozone and the EU as a whole. And I think that could be a bit clearer in your essay, because there are moments where you talked about Greece leaving the EU, and I think that's less likely than Greece leaving the Eurozone. But that's important. And also, maybe there's a question of, for the countries in the EU, because your title is about the EU, if you're Poland or Denmark or the UK, and you're looking at what's going on with all these countries that use the euro, what effect does that have on you? So does it make you more likely to join the euro soon, or to postpone it I know you only go up to April 2016, so you won't cover the UK referendum, but you know, even at that point, the UK was planning to hold a referendum about whether to leave the EU, and I think that is arguably connected, not just with the Greek crisis, but it's.
I'm glad you touched upon on that point, because that's also a question I was gonna ask you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I was rereading my essay yesterday, and indeed I made this change whether sometimes I'm talking about the European Union and sometimes I'm talking about the Eurozone, and especially in my opinion, I think my essay is more on the Eurozone kind of aspect. Therefore, I would like to ask if I should change my question, just restate instead of European Union, the Eurozone. So I don't know.
That's all about your feedback.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. And then one final question was about immigration, and you talked about how that was a way where the Greek problems could be transmitted through the EU. I genuinely don't know, how many people have left Greece. Is it a big percentage of the country compared to people who've left Poland, for example? Is it more or less as a percentage of losing the economy? And then for the countries that are receiving the Greek migrants, is it a significant impact, or is it less than from Italy or Romania or somewhere else? So if you have the chance to look at the data, that might be interesting as well, because you say this is a mechanism through which the economy could be significantly impacted, and it depends how big that migrant flow is. But well done, I really enjoyed reading, and I think you definitely have material for a master's now.
Well, thank you everyone. Victor, I don't have to reiterate what everyone has said. Effective feedback, thank you very much to the panel. We just have a 5-minute change, and then we have Julia presenting. So thank you to everyone. Panelists, thank you. Victor, thank you. Yeah, they're back
I will do. I think I'm coming back for one more this afternoon from the evidence crisis in Brazil. Are you on the same panel? Okay. Good luck with the I talked a lot, but it's a really interesting subject. We could discuss it for several hours, I think.
It's a really great topic.
Yes, thank you so very much.